YouTube link, and now we're live.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. Attendance, I'll take attendance. Mr. Ward is here. Vice Chair Cleary. Mr. Cleary,
I'm here.
Mr. Bruschi,
Here.
Mr. Drake. Absent. Mr. Efficoro,
Here.
Mr. Langdon,
Here.
Mr. Reedy, Mr. Ricard,
Present, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Smith. Okay, we have a quorum. The first item on the agenda is approving the previous meeting minutes. Everybody has received a copy ahead of time. Is there any comments or questions? If not, I'll accept the motion. Mr. Ricard, make a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Langdon to accept. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Unanimous. Item number 2, authorizing an agreement with the Advance Albany County Alliance and amending the 2020 Albany County budget. And we have Mr. O'Connor here today. Mr. O'Connor, thank you for coming back again this month. Would you like to say a few words, a little bit about this?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Ward. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me to the meeting today. And I appreciate the consideration of the startup funding for the Advance Albany County Alliance. This will be the money that we use to start this entity up. We're in the process of applying for our certificate of incorporation and bylaws and so on. And I believe that this organization is even more important now than when the county executive first thought about it. The pandemic has caused somewhat of an economic crisis in our county. And I think the work of the Advance Albany County Alliance is going to be all the more important than it was when first conceived.
I agree. I see we have Chairman Joyce on. Did you want to add anything to it, Andrew?
No, I just want to continue the conversation, the good conversation we've been having over the past couple of weeks about the just utmost importance of investing in job generating, revenue creating initiatives in Albany County moving forward. I think we've discussed it at length, and I'm glad that Kevin O'Connor is on with us tonight to talk about it. And we're going to move forward with this initiative, and I look forward to everyone's support tonight and going forward as we kind of see our way through this.
Very good. Any questions or comments from members of the committee?
One other comment, Mr. Ward.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I'm very fortunate and very glad. I think we're all very fortunate that you are, and I give myself credit for this, that we selected you to lead our economic development construct within the Albany County Legislature, moving this thing forward. I didn't forecast this capability or this possibility of standing up an economic development arm for the county or investing $500,000 in an economic development arm for the county. But here we are, and I'm really glad, and I'm very fortunate that you are the guy that is helping us kind of steer this along, given all of your experience and all of your knowledge in this effort. So it just makes us all look better, and it puts us in a really good position. I'm just very thankful for that as well. I wanted to thank you for everything you've done as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really, the honor is mine. I appreciate you having the confidence in me, but we've made some good choices. The members of the committee are all very dedicated and very experienced as well. And, the county executives signed a good free agent, Mr. O'Connor. He and I have been working for many, many years together. And we've really, after decades, we put together the team to get this job done at probably the most pressing time that I can ever remember in Albany County and actually the world economic history. So I'm very happy to support this, and I'm very happy and thank you for allowing me to be in the position I am. So enough with the slapping each other on the back here. We got some business at hand. Is there any other questions or comments from anybody? If not, Mr. Fine, yes,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm not on the committee, but I would like to say a few words.
you, absolutely.
Thank you. Well, one, I just want to thank everyone who's involved in this process. I think it is a very exciting opportunity that can make a big impact in the county. And if it does move out of the committee, I plan on voting in favor. However, I just want to make a couple points. I'm sorry, I got a phone call. I just want to, one of the things with Zoom, but I just want to make it clear that I think it's very important that we ensure that this local development corporation serves the needs of the minority-owned business community. And I'm referring to both the grant program we're creating and the overall mission going forward. And I know that the bylaws haven't been made yet. I'm looking forward to going over that process, and hopefully we can ensure that through the bylaw process. As we know, the COVID Economic Recovery Task Force, I read through that report. They actually referenced that minority-owned businesses were hit especially hard during the pandemic, and they've faced especially large barriers in getting assistance. And many of these issues, these disparities go beyond the pandemic, have existed, have always existed. And so, I just want to make it clear. I think this is important. Just want to state that. Looking forward to having these conversations in the future, because oftentimes when we don't have these conversations in advance, when we don't ensure that everyone is served, often minority-owned businesses are left out. This is why the state and the county have an MWBE program, which is a very important program. And I think all issues we look at moving forward, especially economic ones, we should really be looking at them. We should be thinking about the existing racial injustices and how we can address those.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Peter, yes.
thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm also not part of this committee, but I was part of the CERT team that Chairman Joyce put together with legislators Purley and Willingham. And Mr. Fine is absolutely right. One of the big things that we talked about were small businesses, specifically ones that were minority or women owned, who specifically didn't have access to grants and federal funding. And that was one of the main reasons why we recommended these small grants to help get individuals through who may have not had access to the same type of funding. And we've sent the CERT findings, which specifically highlighted that in both urban and rural communities for people who didn't have access to that funding to be given priority and been moving forward. And Mr. O'Connor has, confirmed to me of his belief in the same, that, it's certainly a priority, needs to be done, and was highlighted in our CERT report. And I was very happy to work often. And as Mr. Fine indicated, I will, while I'm on this committee, if it moves out, I will also be voting in favor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. You're welcome. Any others? No, if not, I'll entertain a motion to authorize this agreement.
So moved.
Mr. Efficaro, second by Mr. Cleary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Sounds like it's unanimous. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is authorizing an agreement with the Advance Albany County Alliance for the purposes of providing services to assist the economic recovery of Albany County and amending the 2020 Albany County budget. I think this is an initiative of Chairman Joyce and Mr. Peter. I don't know if you want to speak on this first. Mr. Chairman Joyce?
I can speak on it, Mr. Ward. Yeah, correct. This is a kind of an overarching kind of overall theme for tonight is the bylaws and the seed money for this effort. Again, I think I've said most of what I'm going to say kind of as it relates to the overall effort with economic development. And we're fortunate to have Mr. O'Connor kind of leading up this effort, as well as you, Mr. Ward, for the Economic Development Committee as we kind of step forward here. But we're talking about two separate issues, and obviously I'm in support of both. And we've been discussing this in audit and finance and different committees throughout the past couple of weeks. And again, revenue generating and job creating initiatives, and this is all part of it. And I'm in full support.
Thank you. Mr. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this was another prime recommendation from the CERT group, specifically that sales generating small businesses, especially minority and women owned businesses, are hanging by a needle thread in their ability to survive, and that it is much easier to support a small business that is just waiting to having to get through this pandemic than trying to encourage small businesses after the fact. So what was sort of decided and recommended from the CERT group, was that we need to provide a lifeline to help businesses get through as best we can this pandemic, specifically ones that generate sales tax revenue for the future. And this does that. Do I think this is going to solve everything? Absolutely not. It's a step in the right direction. And my hope is under Mr. O'Connor's leadership, it becomes a blueprint for other aid into helping small businesses, again, specifically MWBE businesses.
Very good. Mr. O'Connor, do you want to add today?
No, I just, I've had several conversations with Chairman Joyce and with Mr. Peter and other members, including members of the Black Legislative Caucus. And, like Matt said, this is not going to solve all of our problems, but perhaps this will be a bridge to the next stimulus bill that comes down from Washington. And but I can attest to the fact that there is real economic dislocation out there. And again, primarily occurring in small minority and women-owned businesses.
I agree. And I think Mr. O'Connor and I have spoken about this a lot. I mean, as an economic developer, we're always trying to attract new business to the county. And that's always the ones that get the press releases and the fancy ribbon cuttings. And we still have some of those, but in the last year, we have really focused most of our attention on retaining our existing business. And I don't think I have to tell anybody here the situation we're in, but I think this is a great opportunity. Again, Mr. Peters said it. I don't think it's going to make or break a business, but it might get a few over the hump a little bit, get them pointed in the right direction toward a recovery. So I like to see that we're doing these type of programs, and Mr. O'Connor, I have the faith will administer it properly, and we'll get moving in the right direction here. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Mr. Ward, one
Mr.
more
Grimm,
more
absolutely.
point. Oh, is there Mr.
Yeah,
Langdon?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Is there a member of the committee that wanted to speak on this, or?
I'm
Before I
waiting,
did-
I'm gonna wait my turn, but when you get a chance, I'll.
Mr. Langen, I'm sorry I missed you. Go ahead.
I think something like this, like you said, it's not going to be a solution, a fix-all. But I guess my question, two questions really relative to the grants and stuff is, one, what's the intention, or how are we going to get the word out about these being available? And then two, what will be the process, or where would be the starting point to direct people to apply?
Mr. Ward, I'd like to at least flavor it a little bit prior to, I had mentioned last night when we talked about a different issue, community development line within the county legislature. The first goal for us was to identify the funding. Now we're going to approve it. And I think the next conversation after we approve the path moving forward, when we move the money to our LDC for administration of the project, is how do we do it? I think we can kind of recommend or work in concert with Mr. O'Connor and the LDC and our economic development arm to kind of set those conditions and talk about what the criteria will be as we kind of move forward for these grants to small businesses. And as Mr. Peter mentioned before, it's not going to fix the problems that exist now. It's not going to bring back the businesses that we've already lost. But this is a marathon and not a sprint. And check the box and talk about what we got to do moving forward. And I think one of the reasons in the legislature what we wanted to do is move the funding into the LDC for this initiative. And Mr. O'Connor is gracious of you to help take this project on. They're the experts, and they can help us, identify the good goals and the good, criteria for these businesses and how we can award these grants moving forward, if they're grants or however we do it. So we're not exactly there yet. We are at the 1 yard line. We need to define the funding. We need to approve the funding, and now we need to figure out how we're going to deploy it. And I think we do that with Mr. O'Connor, with the LDC, or with our economic development arm, 2021 moving forward.
And I think also, Mr. O'Connor, you can confirm this, that we have to follow the ABO guidelines that they've laid out for allowing grants. And they're similar to what the IDAs have been afforded. They're very stringent regulations, and there's a lot of reporting and public notice of what has to go out there. So I'm confident that Mr. O'Connor, with his background in the ABO process and economic development grant programs, I think we'll be all set. It is going to be an undertaking, though. This is a huge undertaking. I thank Kevin for taking it on, because a lot of the other organizations are farming these out to contractors, and you end up losing some of your funding by doing that. But Kevin is indicated he'd be able to handle that in-house, so it will be a big job. So anybody else on the committee? I have you, Mr.
Okay.
Grimm.
Okay.
Mr. Grimm, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. Yeah, I understand from Chairman Joyce, there's a lot of things to be resolved, but it's very important going into this process, because there's a lot of taxpayer money, is what the criteria is going to be, that it's public, it's transparent, and that the minority conference has a say in how the criteria is established. And also that we ensure that Gittleton gets its fair share. Okay, everybody has a certain constituency. Mine is Gittleton, and I want to make sure they get their fair share of this money, because we have struggling businesses here as well. I'm also concerned that we have to be careful not to send good money after bad. For example, if we give money to a business to pay the rent for a couple of months, and it turns out they just go out of business 2 months later, that's really not a good idea. So that's just something that I think to be leery of, is to make sure that the money we spend really does lead to more economic development, which is everybody's goal.
And Mr. Grimm, that's always a challenge anytime you have a grant program.
Yeah.
You're dealing with small business. It is challenging to come up with criteria that's, it's not going to be a perfect program. I guarantee that. There is some programs, there's some businesses that I know are going to be more challenging than others, but that's the criteria that we put up beforehand is going to help dictate how that program goes.
That's why it's so important. Yeah, I agree. It's just,
Very important.
we want to make sure we increase the likelihood that we get the bang for our buck, and that everyone is aware how the process works, and sufficient funds are steered to places like Gittleton. Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Chair.
I think everybody in the county, there isn't an area of the county that isn't having economic issues right now, especially in the service industry. And we know that. So, it isn't going to be just Guilderland or Green Island or the South End or Arbor Hill, or, it's going to be all throughout the county. Every business in the county, I shouldn't say every, some have actually done very well because they were able to make adjustments. But most of our small businesses are hurting, doesn't matter where they are.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Any others? If not, I'll accept the motion to authorize an agreement for the purpose of providing services to assist the economic recovery.
Motion.
Mr. Ricard, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Efficario, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any opposed? We're all in favor. I want to note, I see Mr. Drake on there. Note his attendance.
Mr. Reedy also joined us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Reedy, good to see you.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Chairman.
Very good. So we have all those, we do have a positive recommendation on that. We'll move that to the floor. Do we have any other business to come before the Economic Development Committee? If not, I'll accept a motion for adjournment. Mr. Langdon, second. Mr. Bruschi, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.